You were talking of resilience, right? And I think that's a key word that comes up every time we talk about, today's generation, because there's so much uncertainty, so much insecurity, so much changing, which one does not control. So it's a very vulnerable, position.
So we give a very simple equation. Content is information, any information. Even if I'm talking to you, this is content and it's information. So even when two people are talking, we are consuming content. So content, information is equal to thoughts. Then that thoughts repeated is going to come into my action. Any action repeated becomes my sanskar. Sanskar will come into my karam, and my karam will create my destiny. So content is equal to destiny. Choose carefully.
Human life is all about choices, and what choices we exercise and how responsibly we exercise choices is largely driven by the content you consume.
A very warm welcome to another episode of Think Right podcast. And today we have with us Mr. Sivakumar Sundaram from the BCCL, the Bennett Coleman Company. He's the CEO of the company, been with the company for 33 years. And, really a joy to have you here with us, along with, our radiant light sister Shivani. We're going to delve into the world of media, business, spirituality, and many interesting conversations, in this podcast. But Siva, in an era, and let me start with this, when, most people are looking at, a lifetime of careers and doing many things, you have been with this organization for 33 years, I believe starting out as a management trainee to a CEO. How has the journey been? And really, take us a little bit through, your life and your experiences, during this time.
No, thank you, Rajan. At the outset, I want to thank you and Sister Shivani for this opportunity. And I must say that Think Right is absolutely a wonderful initiative which you have started. And I guess this is the need of the hour. Now, coming to your question of this 33 years of journey, and my simple one-line mantra is just go with the flow. Because whatever happens, it happens because of a reason. And you start your career thinking that you want to grow. And therefore, an organization like us, which is fundamentally run on the principle of spirituality, and for us, it is a way of life. And therefore, you're not working here. I would say that therefore, there's a big difference between working and being anything which you do. If you start enjoying it, then there are no stresses in life. Now, coming back to my career of 33 years, obviously I had the good fortune to start with Ashok ji way back. And the value is always in the unknown versus known. Therefore, my first what we call discovery was when I realized a potential of a tax which we would have missed, and a missed tax opportunity gave me that window of opportunity to meet the chairman, and that began my career in taxation division of the organization. And that set me up for introduction to Mr. Samir Jain, his son, and who is the current vice chairman of the company. And again, when he wanted to start the journey of brand capital, a new business division, again it was unknown. I was sitting very comfortably in the finance organization and doing very well. And overnight he uprooted me and he said that, why don't you now shift to this division? I didn't have a minute hesitation. So overnight I shifted, no thinking, had no clue what this business is about, what is going to be its revenue model, or what is going to be the structure, what is the nature of business. But that's a trust which I had in my mentor, Mr. Samir Jain, and jumped into it. Similarly, in 2016, when the sales head left of the organization, the then CEO told me, Shiva, if you want to become the CEO, you need to go to the sales organization. Again, no questions asked. I said, okay, let me do it. And when I took over the sales organization, then the demon came. Again, the revenues crashed. Another set of learning. Another key lesson, first I said go with the flow. The second important lesson which I always learned is this too shall pass. So whenever crises are inevitable part of the organization's journey, but when you remember this principle, this too shall pass, you just put your head down, focus on what you're good at, and then start navigating the crisis or opportunity and continue to grow.
No, I think it's a very inspirational journey, and something that many will benefit from with some of these key aspects that you talk, because at the end of the day, what you rightly said, everybody's trying to find that purpose in doing things which are going to enable them to become the best version of themselves and fulfill some aspect of this journey. Shiva, you are a marathon runner as well, and I think you've been doing that for a long time. Has that in a way shaped the way you think, the way you do, and in what ways, right? And how?
I think I would always say that there are two kinds of people. One sprinters and one marathoners.
Right.
Sprinters, a burst of energy, fast, do it, then move on to something else. Marathon is for long duration. And one of the biggest learnings of marathon, when you start a marathon, there's a lot of euphoria. There's a lot of crowd cheer. The celebrities come and and similarly for businesses, when you start a business, there's a lot of wow, wonderful, you start. Then you reach the halfway mark. When you reach the halfway mark, there's nobody around. You're running low on fuel, which is same as low on funding, or lack of support. And that's the time you will think, why I have got myself into. And that's when your domain knowledge, your skill sets, people who you have trusted, your training, and your own resilience comes into play. I'm talking about both organization as well as. So that's when you say, no, I can do it. This will be. Then it's only you. There's no crowd support, no cheerleaders, nothing. Then you push. Then you reach the 32-kilometer mark. Like every business reaches a 32-kilometer mark, when your body, your intellect, your mind says, give up. You can't go ahead. Then your emotions and heart says, which we call the gut feel, says, now do it. You can do it. And that 32-kilometer mark, every business faces. That's when you push. And ultimately just 2 or 3 kilometers left, then the crowd cheer comes back, funding comes back, everything comes back. And when you finish, the euphoria is so strong that back to the next race, next project, next business, next business.
So, as we look at media, and we look at its impact and influence, it is also a vehicle through which a lot can be conveyed. So when you look at that aspect of the impact that media is having on people and the generation, what are some of the thoughts that come to your mind, and do you think there is a larger change needed in the way people should be consuming content, or you feel that how are you looking at that journey moving from here on?
I would guess that human life is all about choices, and what choices we exercise and how responsibly we exercise choices is largely driven by the content you consume. So in that sense, media has a huge responsibility to present you choices. It has to present both sides of the coin. It has to present both sides of the views, counter views, and you must have observed that in our newspaper, each editor can choose their views depending on what they want to communicate to the readers. So therefore, the role of the media from our prism has always been to present choices so that the discerning readers can exercise their choice and are able to select whichever, whether it's a brand or product, or whether it's a way of life, whichever part of their life they want. For example, even an educational course for a student, or the career choice of an individual. Any choices, because everyday life is about exercising choices, about taking decisions. So therefore, that I would say is one of the fundamental role of the media. And today I can very confidently say that only the print media is today absolutely neutral, because anything which is printed, because a printed word has to be so strong and neutral that it has to be fact checked. It has to be highly curated. Because once it's printed, you can't delete. There is no question of control, alter, delete in a printed world. So in that sense, the responsibility is increasingly growing, and because today in a digital world, because everything is flash, and so I strongly make this point that print sheds light, television sheds heat, and digital is flash.
Very
So
interesting.
therefore the responsibility of print
Yeah.
and reading as in a newspaper in today's day and age is only increasing. And because it shapes human behaviors. At a fundamental level, I think human beings always seek identity. What are we? What are we? And when you read something, or when you consume content, they start identifying, this is me, this is not me, this is what I want to do, this is not me. So therefore, this shaping of behaviors, after that there's a commercial aspect.
Yes.
Because once you identify yourself as something, then the marketers will rush to say that if this is you, then unless you consume this brand, unless there's consume of car, vehicle or this, then it is not you. So then we consume brands, or we buy something. The moment we buy, then we want to seek the next.
Yes.
So this cycle continues.
So how does an individual make the right choice?
We're having a glass of water right now. But she gave us a lot of choices that time. She said tea, coffee, coconut water, lemon water, green tea. Water, I don't think she asked for it. We chose the water on our own. So we're choosing the water depending on how we are prioritizing. Am I consuming it just for taste? Am I consuming it just because it's addictive and I like it and I'm thinking of it again? Or am I just consuming it for nourishment? And so you see, all three of us have chosen water. But we had choices. So it's all about taking that intuitive right decision, knowing that this choice will have a consequence. If instead of a glass of water, I have a cup of tea, it has a consequence in my body. We're not saying which one is right, wrong. It's going to be different for each one. But what was my priority in making that choice? So I prioritized just feeling relaxed, lighter, nourished, not anything which needs to stimulate me. So that's priority. Same thing will happen with content. Even if you're just listening to a piece of music, not even a song, just a piece of music, you will choose which type of music you're listening to depending on what you're prioritizing for your state of mind to be. You want your mind to get stimulated and agitated, you'll use a different kind of a music. You want to just you'll use a different. You want to go to sleep, there's a whole set of music right now available online. So choices is depending on my priority. But if I don't take that pause to prioritize before making a choice, then sometimes I'm just consuming what is being fed to me. It means that I could have said to her, you give me whatever you feel like giving. So I would have just consumed what she feeds to me, or I would consume what everybody else around me is consuming. So that cannot be the right decision. And just what somebody has given to me. So many people are making podcasts. That's their choice. They are making what they want to give us. But we need to take a pause. Do I want to consume? Just remembering that that choice will have a consequence. It will impact your life because it will impact your way of thinking. So we give a very simple equation. Content is information, any information. Even if I'm talking to you, this is content and it's information. So even when two people are talking, we are consuming content. So content, information is equal to thoughts. Then that thoughts repeated is going to come into my action. Any action repeated becomes my sanskar. Sanskar will come into my karam. and my karam will create my destiny. So content is equal to destiny. Choose carefully.
Wow, this is really,
Choose
really giving the whole,
Yeah.
the equation and the scientific way of,
Because it
thinking
does.
through. And it is, which is interesting, Shiva raised, that the way the content is delivered, right? So there is audio visual, there's digital, and then there is print. I mean, if we see our religious scriptures, we see everything was always written. And the power that goes into that written word, if it's written from the right zone, is far more, like, we talk of the world's most powerful editors. They say is the power of that pen. Power of that. You see that staying?
Yeah, I was just thinking while he was talking,
Yeah.
I do so many videos.
Yeah.
Recently, I did a book. Now, your video, you get the camera on and you just speak, okay? And it'll go 20 minutes, and it's book. It took 1 year to write that book, So you write, you rewrite, you edit, you say, no, this word could be replaced with this word will have this vibration. So the end product is so much more richer and so much more higher in its vibration. I thought, no, book writing takes too much time. No, isn't it just easier to record a video? Second, the way it's being consumed. So video, people will just listen, they'll learn. But book, people are making notes, they are highlighting. Then, so like what you said, that print media, while creating is also at a higher level, and I think while consuming it was also at a higher level. A lot of difference. Videos, we just go do this, scroll. Okay, how much is watch time? After 5 minutes, person changes to another video. So you not really learned. But with print media, everybody will.
And I've seen some elderly uncles. When the Times of India will come, they will read every.
Yes.
They'll spend 2-3 hours in a day just reading it, because they, it's the way you consume the news of the
way
world.
it's been
right?
delivered
Just to give you
also,
an
I think
example.
that was also the thing.
I would love to add.
If I may just supplement 2 points.
Yeah.
Sister spoke about how did we exercise choice.
Right.
And she gave 2 examples. The common thread was mindfulness. If we are mindful, and which is your principle of think right, we will select based on what we need. If you are not mindful at that moment, we will say, "Okay, whatever somebody else is taking,
Absolutely.
okay, kuch bhi de dena." I know that. Similarly, when sister spoke about the print medium or writing medium, print is all about study, and I'm totally agree, because it's study. Because what happens is you have an opportunity to, because you have to apply its writing is very difficult. And then because you want to revisit it, so therefore a lot of application of mind to get it right. So I call it print study, TV, screen, and digital scroll. S and S. Digital, we just keep on scrolling.
Absolutely.
You're demystifying the whole content industry for us today.
No, but it is very true.
It is brilliant.
Even between TV to this, even if I just see the Awakening program, they used to watch it with consistency every day. 7 o'clock the program is going to come. And then people would watch the entire episode because there's nothing else which is distracting them.
Correct.
But when they're watching it on phone, while you're reading, then until the next one has come. So you're not really nourishing yourself also with what you are consuming, because that's what the scroll element.
No, and I think also if we are seeing increased levels of mental stress today. When you look at mental health, for example, today as a media company, how are you thinking in terms of the role of media in ensuring that people have better emotional resilience and are able to actually deal with situations better? Is there a role for media?
Again,
how do you do
absolutely.
it?
2 things. Mental health again is defined by the same thing: freedom of choice and ability to choose independently. In that sense, we are extremely fortunate to be in India, the world's largest democracy. Here again, back to your question, what is the role of media? Media has the bird's eye view on the various aspects of moving pieces of the society ecosystem, of the political ecosystem, then beyond international relationship, domestic relationship, interstate conflicts. All this ultimately leads to changes in behaviors, and behaviors is what ultimately impacts your health.
How do you personally deal with some of these challenges?
I define stress as lack of trust. So when you are dealing with someone else and there's a discussion on, if you don't trust that other individual, then you are already feeling stressful. And that stress you pass on to the other individual, and his or her defense mechanism comes up. वो संवाद नहीं होगा, it becomes vidandavad. Both start arguing. So what we have done in our organization is that when you are making a presentation, the first 2 slides, please dedicate to all the mistakes, all the challenges, all the errors, and all the possible things which can go wrong. Put in the first 2 slides, so that the other person or the team is not focusing on what is wrong with the presentation. So then after the 2 slides are done, saying, yes, all this can go wrong, these are the challenges, these are the problems. After that, the whole focus of the group, then they all become relaxed. Neither of them have to, the trust deficit goes away, high level of trust, and then people get into a more, what we call, Edward de Mono calls in a more constructive discussion of how we can collectively solve a problem. The fundamental principle of collaboration is trust. And you can always see in a room, when there's a lot of vidandavad, as we call it in our culture, there's lack of trust.
And so I was just thinking of it while he was talking about it. I said, okay, imagine first 2 slides are all the things that we can go wrong. Now when you start working on the other thing, now my mind is not going to go to what can go wrong, which we normally tend to do when we are reading the other thing. Like, but this can go wrong, but this. But then they've already finished covering up the first 2 slides. So now this is silencing that clutter in the mind. And so when you're silent like this and you're listening, you're absorbing better. And then your intuitive ideas will come out of it. And all the criticism, judgmental thinking is already over. This is going to make the mind silent in the rest of the presentation. So whoever thought of it has come up with some brilliant method of just silencing that turbulent mind first, and then allowing that silent mind to absorb the constructive information, which is the useful information. Because sometimes we are reading, we are listening, but we're already thinking. And that often happens in a team. And that's why that conversation goes into an argument, because my right is going to be different from your right. But you have already presented, yes, I know all these things can go wrong. So then it leaves me with no thing that I don't have to think about what all he can do wrong. He already knows what all can go wrong.
And creating a culture is not easy, right? Because different people will come in, influence, and I think therefore, when someone has a long career, you are able to influence culture only over a period of time. But as the world is changing today, you see young Gen Zs, I'm sure you're dealing with, many different types of people, different, and especially in media, because today every individual who has a social media account has a point of view and is a journalist, and, media is getting How do you transcend this culture? Are you able to transcend these cultural aspects? Because it must be a big responsibility for you as CEO to think through that, 5 years down the road, do we want to keep this same culture? Do we adapt to a new generation? How does one navigate that complexity?
Excellent question. Actually, in today's day and age, there are actually 5 generations which are at workplace and 5 generations at the consumer end also. Starting from baby boomers to Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. So there's 5 generations at work. But at the heart of it is the heart of your organization is the culture. And successful people, we have always seen, can have very high IQ. Success in an organization is a function of high EQ. Therefore, understanding and adapting to the company's culture determines success. But at the same time, the core of the culture will not evolve. But at the same time, it should not be rigid enough for it to break, because certain will not accept. So it has to evolve, but the core will never change.
It's 3 words. Sanskar, Sanskriti, Sansar. Sanskriti is culture. Sanskriti is coming from the sanskar. So we keep thinking everything needs to change. There are certain things which are tried and tested and they are right. Like we say, this is the culture of our family. Had we continued holding on to the culture of our family, then we would not be talking about those issues that we are talking about in the children of today. It's because we allowed them to, or they chose to do, or whatever, not right or wrong, but we did not hold on to that culture. We are not holding on to the culture of Bharat, our country. Then if we are not holding on to the culture of my family, not holding on to the culture of my organization, then I am not grounded to those principles which are tried and tested, and they are right for my mind, for my body, and for that work. So sanskar, there's nothing to change in them. The right sanskar is a right sanskar. Let the whole world say this is wrong. You know it's a right sanskar because it's healthy for your mind and for your body and for your relationship. From that sanskar will create the Sanskriti, culture. And from that Sanskriti will create your world, sansar. Sansar can have changes. So it's sanskar and Sanskriti is like your foundation of the house, which is underground. Nobody can see it. Out there is that whole
Sansar.
building. You can keep renovating your house. You can change the paintings, you can change the furniture, you can even bring it down and create a new house. But your foundation still remains the same. That foundation is not visible for people to just come and change it. Those are the principles on which we live. Those sanskar and Sanskriti is like foundation. Of course, you can keep doing changes in your ways of working, whatever culture, but not those culture. That culture is based on your sanskars. It's not a way of working, it's a way of living. That's why when you say, this is not our way of working, this is a way of living. When it is a way of living, there's nothing to change in that.
You know, we are today sitting with probably generation listening, which is the future generation. And they are probably thinking, how am I going to build upon or change what is there? I mean, and this applies at every level, right? A mid-manager to a senior to, you know, it's interesting to just think. So I'd love to think how you think about
actually,
this.
this is all,
Yeah.
as Sister Shivani said, certain things are hard-coded.
Yeah.
And that hard coding is there in our organization also.
Very good.
Saying that the next generation is absolutely discouraged to enter into any business which is non-kosher. So we do not invest in alcohol, cigarettes, meat. We do not want to profit from any interest from a restaurant which can have non-veg. And we actively are encouraged to serve Sattvic way of life, because it doesn't matter, because there are many businesses which can be done for profit, but if it compromises your own values and purposes, so those aspects are hard coded
Yeah.
in the philosophy of the organization. So even when next generation takes over, it's almost like a condition, as Sister Shivani said, it's your sanskar.
Yes.
And this word sanskar we use very often in our, कि ये हमारा संस्कार में नहीं है, तो हम नहीं करेंगे. We, for example, will not get into combat sports. We will not do boxing. We will not get into sport with the sanskar, because it's violent hitting sports. We have written articles also on it. So we will not get into that, because it's, whether it's boxing, whether it's doesn't matter. So, but for us, we will not do it. So this is our sanskar. And therefore, and because it's coded, the next generation will also not get into it. And they always say, yes, conflicts happen. Sansar mein to hoga na. That's the definition of sansar. They different views, different things. But it's so clear. For us, it's so easy. इसमें तो लिखा है. हम नहीं करेंगे.
It's because it's on the principles of spiritual principles. The seed is a spiritual principle. So the priority is sanskar and karam. They know that every karam will have a consequence. So like imagine taking a decision that no advertising, nothing of any brand which is to do with alcohol, to smoking, with meat. Within a restaurant also who's serving. See the level to which they are holding on to that principle, because they are working basic from a spiritual principle. Otherwise you can have a principle only of wealth and achievements and name and fame and spreading. So it's all the basic priority. That's why I said even business can be seva.
Yeah.
Because if it's based on that principle. So if that leader, the founder of an organization starts it on those basic spiritual principles and makes sure that this will never change. And that's what I say at the Brahma Kumaris also. No, started 1936, so how many years back?
Yeah, 90 years.
So much has changed. Started from a group of 200 to today in 137 countries. People of all nationalities, cultures, religion, age group, everything. Basic things cannot change. And a no means a no means a no. And if anyone is wanting to change that, we don't even count them as a part of the...
Yeah.
That's it. That basic thing cannot change. And that is actually the thread which holds the organization together, and is also the thread that the intent with which it was started, that intent never changes. There's nothing that will compromise the principle, and the intent will never change. So the purpose will always be fulfilled of the organization.
Yeah. And I think it's an individual, it's a business, it's a beautiful way of looking at it. And I know, many people say in a journey of a country, and I remember earlier we used to talk, when we were talking of the 15-year journey or now a 25-year journey for India, we say we should, run a marathon in 400-meter sprints. Right? But what we forget is at the end of that 400-meter sprint, you have to again re-energize yourself before you can take the next 400-meter sprint. But a true marathon is the way you described it.
You have to pace yourself.
Yeah, you have
Life
to
is
pace
all
yourself.
about pacing yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't pace yourself, there'll be burnout.
Yeah. You were talking of resilience, right? And I think that's a key word that comes up every time we talk about, today's generation, because there's so much uncertainty, so much insecurity, so much changing, which one does not control. So it's a very vulnerable, position. Any thoughts on how, in today's day and age, how can one create greater resilience?
No, again, resilience also comes based on your own upbringing. And question is that, again, it changes from generation to generation. Because today's generation, earlier generation was what we call roti, kapda and makan, we call it. That was the main challenge. And today's generation has no challenge with roti, kapda and makan. So the resilience of a generation which had to struggle for the basic needs versus a generation which is focusing on wants, the level of resilience will be fundamentally different. So therefore, it is a generational shift. So the definition of how do you deal with resilience also has to be contextualized based on, and also what is that you want to accomplish. What is the fire in your belly? And therefore it again goes back to resilience, again is closely related to your values and purposes.
The resilience that we talk about, emotional resilience, right? So that emotional resilience is the coping mechanism to situations of my life. So that resilience can be cultivated. It can be created. So if we have an element of spiritual principles, even if you don't call it spiritual principles, it is principles of right thinking, consciousness of karma, like we normally do a session on karma and its consequence. Same people, let's say 1,000 people last evening, it was sitting in a hall. 1 hour before they will say, obviously if they do this, I will get hurt. Obviously, just within a 1 hour conversation, but why did they do this to me? This was a past karmic account which has come to me. What choice do I have now? To create a higher vibrational karma and to settle my past karmic account and not go through a consequence. Just that understanding of very basic principles of karma and consequence and destiny. At the end of 1 hour, people are going to say, I'm ready to bless the one who has done wrong to me. Who has done wrong to me, I am ready to bless. I could be going through a legal case with that person, that's fine. But holding to hatred, creating resentment, talking ill about the person, or resorting to wrong methods to fight that case, that I am not going to do. I am going to create the right karma and I am going to bless. 1 hour, resilience is changed now. Now that person's coping capacity to that situation, to that relationship which they were earlier calling toxic because they were blaming the other person for that toxicity, we're like, this is my past karmic account. I am the one who has to change it and I'm ready to change it now. It really doesn't take time. It just needs the right information and then a little consistency with practicing on that. Your fitness level will increase.
You know,
So if I may just supplement, see, again, the growth, by definition, is resisted. Because how do you do muscle training? By doing resistance training.
Right.
When you want to grow, the whole ecosystem will oppose it. So that is the resilience which again ingrained in the leader brand. So that is again a part of the organization way of dealing with, saying that leader brand will always face resistance when they want to grow in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Sister Shivani gave the spiritual example,
Yeah.
but I am giving you
yes,
a
yes,
corporate
yes,
example.
no,
objective
Absolutely.
example of saying that growth, if it is not resisted, it is not growth.
Right.
So that resilience of saying that you have to strength train to build your muscle, is the same principle applies for organization which is hungry for growth, and without growth you can't survive.
Yeah. No, and I think the same thing applies to every individual, right? It applies to them. And therefore the role of media, every time we come back to that, is, you know, how do you train correctly? What's the right education? Is there a way to get the positive to shine out from a negative kind of a situation? Is there a greater role media can play in you know, the same incident being narrated in a manner which is positive? Or is there something consciously being done about that? Can one do it?
No,
Or is it your consumer which wants it differently?
No,
How does
actually,
it work?
news is news. Because there's no question of saying that we'll only have a concept of positive news, or we'll have more positivity. So there are certain, again, principles under which we operate. One is that whichever government is in power, whichever economy which is currently, whichever industrialists are working, our philosophy and principle is to support them. They have been elected. So and so industrialists are doing good work. Whatever good work they are doing, that has to be supported and encouraged. And that's the philosophy under which we operate. At the same time, we call it death, decay, destruction. They have to be reported, because they are again a way of life. It's not that we can gloss over it, and no, it has to be reported in its. That's therefore a newspaper, if you see, is organized in sections, and our edit and news are separate. We call the edit the church and the newspaper the state, and they are separate people. They don't report to each other. Edit is our view. Rest is news. Then you have headlines. So therefore, news is organized, what we call like the thali, Indian thali. You pick and choose what interests you, what affects you, what can make a difference to you.
A beautiful way to put it. You know, a thali which has all the nutrition in it, you know,
but
for the mind,
thali
body
still,
and soul.
But the thali presenter still has a choice how to present that thali,
Yes.
you know? Yeah. So I just remembered I was doing an event in one of the states, and the leader of the state was one of the guests. Normally spiritual events don't even get covered otherwise, but the leader of the state was one of the guests, and the past leader of the state was also one of the guests. They both spoke extremely well about that topic, which was about mind power. They both spoke very well about it. But when they entered, there was some confusion on the chair, you know, who has to sit where, because our sisters had organized that protocol. Probably they didn't take care. So then one had to get up and then move there, and then the other person came. You know, the next day's news was not about what they both spoke. And they both spoke very well about mind power and how it's needed for the people. That news was about this chair thing with the picture of that. So that's like retained so much on my mind that political leaders spoke so beautifully, so powerfully on thought power, sanskar. And the only thing you chose to put there, that there was a confusion with the chair, oh, so and so had to get up. And so that's also that, how is that? I mean, what did you get out of that? What did you pick? So then what is the reader only going to consume? Again, it's consuming only ego, clashes. That is only what I get from that news, no? Even though the same two people spoke very powerfully. So that's also the way all about how
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
presented.
That is there, and then sometimes there is a consumer who wants a thali
Yeah.
in a particular way, and somewhere your business. So it's just all of these comes back to our opening thing around choices, and how do we stick to our conscience or our culture, our values to be able to make choices that are right. And this is going to be an ongoing battle.
If I may
Yeah,
just
yeah,
supplement
please,
just one
please,
word.
please. Yeah, and then we go
Sister,
into
in a spiritual organization, you talked about the headlines. So the point here is, message here is, even in a spiritual environment, political power was at play.
Yeah.
That was the headline.
Must be that
Yeah,
must have been
yeah.
the headline.
So,
Yeah,
What,
that's
what I'm
saying.
saying is
Yeah.
that, so your
Politics
identity,
is-
you're not even able to shed your identity
Yeah.
in a spiritual organization, because it doesn't, in a spiritual organization, it doesn't matter
Yes.
who
of
you
course.
are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It
So
does.
therefore, the reason, probably, I don't know
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it must be that.
The reason is
it
that
shouldn't matter,
it
but
doesn't-
yeah.
but since you are not able to shed your identity,
Yes.
even in a spiritual organization,
ego.
that captures the imagination of
Yes.
the
Yeah.
nation. So that must have been the editor's
No, brilliant.
Yeah, but
prerogative.
what we think is like, the people didn't get anything beneficial to learn from there. That is the whole thing. Yeah.
No, I know we can
Yeah.
go on with this
Absolutely.
conversation, but we have a last section for this podcast where we talk about it as a mindful minute. So I'll just
Sure.
kind of ask you a few questions that could be a little more focused and useful for our audiences also. So what's the one book, Shiva, that has significantly influenced your leadership philosophy? Is there a one book?
I can quote several books,
Yeah.
but again, I want to say that working with my boss, Samir Jain, and the way of life, see, his philosophy has been that all books are boundary conditions. All books, and I can quote a book, since you asked for a book, Nassim Taleb's Anti-Fragile. It's a beautiful book saying that how flexible you need to be. If you're rigid, you break, but how flexible you need to be, so to bounce back when there's an opportunity. But Mr. Samir Jain's philosophy always has been, you are not a movie CEO to take decisions. Decisions gets taken in your table. Because you're inside the play ring, boundary conditions are defined what we read in the books, but inside the play field, inside the chakra view,
Situation is different, yes.
situations are different, and that there are no playbooks for that. So that comes from your intuitiveness, and that makes all the differentiation.
Absolutely.
Tapping into the right source for the decision. One piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I should have been probably much more confident of my skill set and knowledge. Probably, I don't know.
I'm going to ask the same question to Sister Shivani as well.
One advice.
Given
my
that I know your younger self as well.
Yeah, my younger self is only, I think, the one thing which I took very, very long was to understand spirituality, and to even very long. I could have started it much earlier, but there again was not using intuition, was using only the logical side and wanting everything to be logical. So I think I could have told myself to just experiment without.
It's amazing, right, how we come back to exactly these things, because somewhere in our education, like whether it's confidence, whether it is, we miss these pieces, right? We are only told what you should say, what you should do, jhoot mat bolo, and therefore, source of all of that is thought. If we are a little more mindful early on, which used to be,
Tentativeness
it would have made a
disappeared.
difference to all of our lives.
Yes.
I mean, I also would have a very similar kind of answer to a question like this. Okay, how do you unwind from your work pressures?
Unwinding is for people who got wound up.
Beautiful.
Nice one. I'm not going to ask her that question because it doesn't apply.
So you should not always create a way of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go for something, do something so that you never get wound up.
Yeah. And a daily habit that has been a game changer for productivity?
Morning exposure to the sun. Energy is from the sun. Wake up with the sun. Your day should go with the sun. But I'm a morning person. Morning exposure to the sun, whichever place you are, is the energy for the day.
And when you say exposure, actually spending
No,
physical
exposure
time,
means you have to run,
waking up. Or run.
walk,
Yeah.
walk,
With the-
meditate,
Right.
But
With the sun.
with the
on
sun,
you.
with the sun on you.
Yeah.
Yoga, do whatever you want. But you have to have the morning exposure to the sun for your morning energy.
What advice would you give? Hopefully, we'll have first-time marathon runners here. What advice would you give to a first-time marathon runner?
No, whether it's a marathon runner or somebody who's beginning a career, first is clarity. Because you have to be very clear, because today's the question you always say, people say, I'm confused. At 18 or 20, you cannot be confused. You need to have the clarity. You should know your strengths. You should know your weakness. Invest in your strengths. Second is invest in yourself. Because if your money has to grow, you have to invest. If you have to grow, you have to invest. All three aspects, body, mind and soul. Physical exercises, read. And spirituality, meditation, whatever you follow, it doesn't matter. Invest in yourself. Third is decision. You should be decisive. You can't be tentative if you want to succeed. If you are chosen to run a marathon, if you want to embark on a career, you have to be decisive. Otherwise, because choices are too much. You can say, I can do this, I can do this. No, be decisive. Then your attitude. What attitude? Because sometimes all the plans are very important. Plans never go as you have planned for. So there were adaptability. And last but not the least, align the stakeholders, because people do not care what you have to offer. People only care what is in it for me. Whatever you want to do in life, it has to be addressed what is in it for me, for you to succeed in life.
So you have to make that happen. So this is like a marathon of a life lessons, but thank you. I think it's really been a very enriching, inspiring discussion. And thank you again for being here and sharing all of your insights. And obviously, both of us, we were with your guidance and with those anecdotes so that you brought in, all of us, and I hope we've taken out one more lovely podcast for our audiences. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have created a new series, Think Right Podcast, where Sister BK Shivani and I discuss many aspects related to mindfulness with multiple guests on very different subjects. Come watch it on the thinkrite.me app.